everyone. The retired nationals of American Christian.
Retired.
Yeah.
Retired. Thanks for having the party, Suzanne.
Hello.
1 year. So I have like hundreds of stories to tell from when Mary Kay was only 11 years old, the company. So, but I'm going to pick two that were very special. One was, I know you said one, but I have to say two.
51
years.
years.
One was when they were opening Mexico, and Mary Kay wanted to start Mexico, and who's going to go, and you know, how to get this going. It was back in 1988, and I had just had my baby. I had struggled for many years to have a baby. So finally, the baby was here in July, and Mary Kay calls me on the phone in November. It says, Mary, you always have been translating for us. You've been translating for the company. I want you to come with me, and I want you to come to Mexico. And she went on and on. And I go, Mary Kay, I can't go. I just had my baby. I'm so excited. I'm so happy. I have nobody to live with. And she says, you will find someone to live with. So I said, well, Mary Kay, but you know, I'm not from Mexico. I'm not Mexican. I don't know anybody there. How am I going to get this going? She says, well, number one, you will be helping us translating. But most of all, you know how to one shot. So you go outside and you start talking. And I'm pretty sure you're going to build a unit there. That was the second one, but then I said, I'm going to win her with this one. So Mary Kay, I am not an American citizen yet. I don't have a passport. We are U.S. residents, and there's no way that Cubans could travel to Mexico without a passport. Huh? Don't worry, Mary. Let me pull some strings together. Let me make a couple of phone calls, and I will call you back.
Oh my God.
But I was sure that she was not going to win that one. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days later, she calls me and she goes, are you ready? Do you have a suitcase? Did you find who's going to? She says, no, I got you a re-entry permit from the U.S. government as my companion, so you can come back into the country. And I go, what do I do now? Who's going to take care of the baby? Well, anyway, everything got together. And while we was there, she said to me, you work Mexico. Mexico is going to take care of you in the future. Well, I have 11 nationals in Mexico.
Thank you.
Always so wise. And that was one of the lessons that I learned, was that you cannot say no to Mary Kay. Never. And then I was the last. I mean, you say 51, so it took you all those years to become a national. No, you know that. That takes you 1 year once you decide really what to do. But I had a lot of fears. Number one, I didn't fly. I did everything, my business, everything was by driving. And they had called me, Louis Ray had called me that Mary Kay wanted to meet with me. And after seminar, so seminar finished, I think July, she called me at the end of August. She says she really thinks you're ready to become a national, and she likes to meet the nationals and their family before signing, yes, like an okay. And I didn't know that. So my family was Melissa, and she was only like 8 years old. And of course, I drove all the way from Florida to Dallas, okay, to meet with Mary Kay, and it was supposed to be 45 minutes. So we get there, she comes out, she greets me, she greets my daughter, we go inside, and she starts, her conversations, how you doing? And my daughter, of course, she said, what is that bird? She said, that's from Mexico. And my mom goes to Mexico. Little girls talk. Melissa made a drawing of Pocahontas. It was in that time. And so she opened the drawer from her desk, and there was our nail polishes. They're clear. She goes, oh, my mommy has one of those. And she goes, you want to try them on me? She sat Melissa on her laps. She took out the nail polish, and Melissa started doing it. Oh, dear Lord. Oh, my goodness. And she noticed in my face, and she went, it's okay. It's okay. So one of the things that happened there was that, of course, as a child, my daughter goes, we're sitting, and right above the sofa that Mary Kay had, there is Madeline's framed picture, her daughter. And Melissa, my daughter, asked her, who is that? Mary Kay said, that's my daughter. She goes, does she work here? She goes, no. What does she do? She went asking her questions until Mary Kay said, she's not with us anymore. So Melissa said, oh, so she died? She goes, no, she moved to a new home. Till this day, my daughter has never forgotten and suffered the loss of a family member. Because all she says to everybody, and she has 3 kids of her own, is that they moved to a new home. And when we went to take the picture, she goes, well, Mary, you're going to drive 5,000 miles back and forth. We need to take your picture. Let's take the picture. Of course, none of this thing existed. So I took my little camera. The battery had died. And I said, oh, this is not working, Mary Kay. And why? Well, the battery is not working. And of course, she saw me nervous. She says, she picked up the phone and she called Jennifer. She says, Jennifer, we need a camera. Find a camera. Somebody in this building must have a Polaroid or something. So we need a camera so Mary could take a picture home with her baby. Well, it took us an hour and a half, like you were saying. An hour and a half for someone to move a Polaroid camera. Came in, we have 3 of those pictures. There was only 3 left. We have the 3 pictures, one with me alone, one with Melissa, one the 3 of us. And I took my pictures. I was the last national that Mary Kay got together with.
Oh, wow.
She got sick right, I think it was a month or 2 months after that, the last one. And I have kept that so treasured. And just in case you have somebody in your family that's a little overweight, she asked me, Mary, what's really holding you back? And I said, well, I know that St. John don't make suits larger than 18, and I was a 24. And she goes, you become a national, and I'll make sure we'll make from 2 suits, we'll make one for you. Wow. Out of 2 suits, we'll make one for you. That was what got me on fire, and I became a national.
Wow. The assistant came from Larry Harley's office, and she had her back to the assistant, came in through the door, and she stood there for as long as she could, and then she said, Mary Kay, Larry is ready to see Stacy now, and she still had my hands, and she said, well, you can tell Mr. Harley that I'm not done with Stacy yet. And the assistant, who just backed out of the room and said, okay. And then Mary Kay said, looking at me, it is so fun to have power. Because these stories are the most precious, truly. I guess okay. So when I went to director, it was actually NIQ. When you became a national sales director, they flew us to Dallas at that point in time. Yeah. And when we got off the plane, there was a gentleman with a sign that said Stacy James on it. And when I walked toward him, he said, okay, I've been told that we're supposed to take the husband to the hotel and the wife to the corporate office, because he was not a Mary Kay person. He was someone that they hired. And that was not how it was done when they had a driver that picked you up at the airport. And so got us into that limousine and took us to the Mary Kay corporate offices, which he just thought was the craziest thing in the world, that he was going to take Brian to the hotel. So as we drove up in front of the corporate offices, which I didn't think about, the last time I had been there was when I was at DIQ. So I got out of the limo and I'm looking at the steps of the Gold Building, and Dale was standing outside having a cigarette. And he looked at me and realized I was very emotional, and so as I walked up the steps, he said, Stacy, we're so excited that you're here. And I said, I'm so excited that I'm here. And Dale, I think you were standing there when I was in DIQ having a cigarette. Right now. Took me up, and then I had an hour with Tom Watley, brand new. He was there. That was right when he was there. And he'd been at my national debut, so that was a very fun thing to be able to be sitting with him. He was supposed to give me gifts, because everybody that you spend time with, you were supposed to get a gift. And he didn't know that he was supposed to have a gift, so he, at the end of our conversation, said, I think I have vitamins. Is that okay? So I had an hour with Connie White. And I had an hour with actually Erin Kilton at that point in time, because she had worked put this all through NIQ. And then I had my hour with Mary Kay before Larry Harley. And when I sat in front of Mary Kay, of course, she took my hands in her hands and said, knee to knee. And of course you're crying. I mean, she was talking to me, I'm crying, and I couldn't even pull my hand away like to blow my nose or wipe my eye. I mean, I felt like a total mess. And I said, she stopped talking and said, do you want to say something? And I said, Mary Kay, I wish I could take my heart out of my chest and put it in your chest so you can feel what it is that I want to say, because I do not have the words to tell you how grateful I am for what you've done for my life and my family's life. And she said, Stacy, you don't have to take your heart out of your chest. Just look into my eyes. And if you can transfer what you're feeling from your heart through my eyes, that is your job as a national sales director for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And you've done it.
And she was in Paris with Mary Kay, and a bunch of them went into a little tiny bathroom. Were you there?
Versailles.
We
were in
yeah,
Versailles.
okay, wherever you were. Anyway, it was in France. And a bunch had crowded in a small bathroom, and she said, we're going to be catty, kind of gossiping a little bit. And then out from the stall comes Mary Kay. And she goes up to Cheryl and says, okay, do me. Cheryl goes, well, you got your makeup compact out. I want you to do my makeup. Can you do my makeup? And so, if you know Cheryl, you know her makeup compact has been rolled in the dirt. And, who knows where it was. But she pulled her compact out. It looks terrible, she says. Cheryl's like dying. Okay, Mary Kay. And then she did a little this and a that. And then she pulled an emerald eyeliner. She was in her eyeliner. Mary Kay looked in the mirror and said, oh, I love that color. Let me guess. They discontinued it, right? Yes, Mary Kay, they discontinued it. Cheryl tells that story so often.
Trips, right. But you know, she was a visionary, but she was also the real deal. She taught me to never forget where you came from and to be humble. She was a humble servant. But the trip memories, I mean, just one-liners. We were somewhere and we'd had enough food, and she looked at me, she said, Pam, I'd give anything to see some golden arches. We were overseas somewhere. She was so funny. Besides her yard sales and her clipping coupons. But my favorite, we went to Hong Kong. And that was a long time ago. And she said, girls, I've got a surprise for you. At 9 o'clock, I want you to come up to my room. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Jeff, we're going to Mary Kay's room. What do you think? We thought she was going to train us or whatever. So we're up in her room, on her bed, like bouncing on her bed. And there's a knock at the door. And this man is at the door. And he comes in, and he's got a jacket on. And he opens his jacket, and his jacket is lined with Rolex watches, Lady Piaget. Oh, Mary Kay liked the deal. She liked a deal.
She did.
He sold everything in his jacket that night. And Mary Kay, we just every time we see Rolex, we just crack up because she bought Richard a Rolex. She bought
Rolex or a Rolex?
Rolex.
Oh, wow.
But it was just funny, and it just reminded me to never forget, you're never above, she was never, never above.
They were Rolex inspired.
They were, yes. But it was funny.
The New York ones.
Pam.
Yeah.
Because of Mary
Oh,
Kay.
yes.
And how about notes that say, Ash says ask? Do you have some of Mel's letters? Because he wrote his daughters, and he always would end it, say, just remember, Ash says ask. And he was as much a part of Mary Kay as she was with notes. I can't tell you, and I have a box of them. I'm sure many of you do too. I love that we're doing this because I forget. And then every time someone says, oh yeah, remember that? Well, I went into the Cadillac dealership in my town one time, and the before when I picked up the Cadillac, the guy that did the leasing, we called him the Silver Fox. It was Alexandria. He was so precious, and I wrote Mary Kay and said, I just want you to know what a wonderful experience, more Cadillac. They did such a great job. Well, 2 years later, whatever, this was as a director, when I walked into that dealership, what was on the wall? A signed letter from Mary Kay thanking them for the way they're treating her daughters. And guess what? The signature was smudged. They wanted to know, just like we did.
Did you know it was her?
Yep.
Real deal.
So keep the memories going. Oh, we got to stop. Oh.
And it's because of all of you. Every single national sales director. I went to career conference in March, almost quitting Mary Kay, had half my inventory boxed up to send back because I had just had our second baby, was working 50 hours a week, thought, how am I going to do this? So what do you get rid of? Can't get rid of your husband, your kids, your job. And so Mary Kay was the answer. And I walked into career conference and listened to the 4 national sales directors. I sat in the very back row, nursing a baby. Michelle Suddeth, my senior national, she talked me into going and through going and why I had to go. And I'm just like, all right, I'll go. And I cried. I said to my husband before I left, when I come back, I'll probably just finish boxing all this stuff up and quit. And then I come home and I'm like, I'm going to be a sales director. I'm going to quit my job in my car. And he's thinking, what in the world happened? But I want you all to know, and I think the company needs to know this. I believed in this company before I met Mary Kay because of all of you. Because nationals change the energy of a room in 2 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
Nationals pour their heart out, no matter what's happening in their life. We know how to enter that stage, enter that room, pour our heart out to the people in the sales force. And we are missing the boat here because we need nationals on stage every chance they can because that's what sold me. And then I became a sales director that following May, got to go to Mary Kay's home, again, one of the last classes, sat at her home. She had little, the white dog, Gigi, and somebody called it a dog and she said, it's a fur person. And you remember all those things, but I wouldn't have got to there had it not been for all of you. Wow. So that's what we got to keep in mind. It's the national sales directors. We create the energy, we create the atmosphere, we create the dream, the vision, the how-to, the I can do it attitude before before anything else happens. And it could just be one little phone call. If it wouldn't have been for Michelle talking me into going to career conference, corporate wasn't going to call me to talk me into it. It was and she was my director. She wasn't my national at the time. Carly was my national, or Pat was my national. I don't remember who was my national at the time. I guess it was Pat Fortenberry. But that's what we do for people. And that's what we have to keep alive in this company, or we have to. So.
I joined Mary Kay in 1994 and so I joined in January, went to New Director Training Week that December, and my mother had passed away in October. And I almost didn't go because, I did the funeral, I was just distraught. She was 49 years old, and it was my stepmom that died of brain tumors. It was just devastating, but someone told me to go to New Director Week. It's where I met Kim McClure. She and I were DIT sisters. Only 2 nationals to come out of that class, but Mary Kay was there, like you all said, and she stood and trained for 4 hours. And remember we would all get our picture with her, and she would stand in line for hours, and there were hundreds of us, and you were with your roommate. So here I am with my roommate, and I'm so nervous to meet her. Plus I'm just kind of a wreck. But so we get up to the front, and I would drag my roommate, like we bit 3 people from her. I'd say, I'm not ready. And I'd go back to the back, and this went on 3 or 4 times, and finally we were the last 2 standing in the room. And we got up there, and we had to. That was it. It was now or never. So, and she always had bodyguards on both sides of her, and they would stand back. And so my roommate talked to her, and then I went up to, you're thinking, what am I gonna say? I have 30 seconds or less. What do you say to this person that's bigger than life? And so I opened my mouth and just ugly cried. Just ugly cried. It was awful. And she, like so many of you said, took my hand, her soft hands, they were like butter, and just put them on my face. And she said, tell Mary Kay what's wrong. She knew that I wasn't just overwhelmed meeting her. She knew something was wrong by the way I cried, and I just blubbered. And so, I mean, I don't know how long I did. She just sat there, she didn't move, didn't take her eyes off me. And then one of the bodyguards kind of touched her shoulder like, it's time to go. You know, and Mary Kay just went like this.
Yep.
To him.
And didn't take her eyes off you.
Never took her eyes off me. She just went like this, and he was like,
Yep.
you know, that's all she had to do. And she just said, tell me. And I told her, I just lost my mom, and, you know, I'm just kind of a wreck, but I'm so honored to be here, and thank you so much, and I don't even know what to say to you, because you changed my life. And she said, well, I will never be able to replace your mama, but let me stand in her gap. I'm trying to remember that word. Let me stand in her gap while we're still here on earth. I never forgot it. By the time I got home, like maybe 3 days later, I'm not kidding you, there was a handwritten letter. I was one of, I need to call the company and say how many were in our class. It was easily 200, 300, maybe more.
There were some big
How would she
classes.
remember? It was a handwritten letter saying, I really meant what I said, Tammy. Anytime, and gave me her personal number, which I never used, but to call her. And I'll never forget it. And that, guys, that was almost 20 years after your experience, and she was still doing it.
Yes.
She just did it. So.
That's awesome.
Seminar, and I can tell you when it was. It was 1978.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And that was my first seminar as a consultant. So 3 months into the company, scared out of my mind to, you know, invest in inventory, spend that time away from work, go to that seminar, and then hear about this Susie Vickers person and not even begin to comprehend the immensity of who she was until you saw Mary Kay come out on that darkened stage and speak about her friend and that crescent moon and the star. And she cried. She had tears, but she continued on.
That's right.
And then she talked about when God closes doors, He opens windows. She gave us that little charm. Remember how she used to give us charms, you guys? A little shovel charm. For the little bit of good you shovel into others' lives, and the big shovel that He'd shovel tenfold back into yours. And I remember, I was sold. I was just like, I don't care what I have to do.
That's right.
I don't care how long it takes. Whoever she is, I'm in. I am in it. And I remember that and the impression, you know, thinking I have to learn to set myself back and not be the big deal. And have, you know, elevate others, because that's what she did for the entire time we saw her. And then I remember walking out on stage at Career Conference in Minneapolis, and the whole place went nuts, because that was my hometown. And I was completely, you know, blown away, shocked, but it was like hometown girl does good, you know? And so for 3 days or 2 days or 24 hours, whatever that was, just hugging people who, it's like, oh my gosh, somebody from us did it, actually did it. And that gave them hope, you know, just like Mary Kay gave me hope that first seminar, that anything is possible. And then remembering that first seminar as a national, and finally the culmination of raising 3 amazing kids and always being able to do God first, family second, career third.
That's right.
You know, not well all the time at all of them, but just figuring it out as long as we went. And being able to have them there with me and be completely, utterly blown away, completely shocked. And Jeff, of course, but to see it through the eyes of your children.
That's right.
And so, thank you guys. You were all my role models and people I learned from and admired. And I just, gosh, if we could package and bundle that feeling of what we pour into how they see us, not as we're the big deal, but how she made us feel that they're the big deal, you know. Go ahead.
Because I remember when Mary Kay had her stroke. How many of you remember that? And my husband and I remember thinking, what are we going to do? You know, she can't talk. And what is she going to go to seminar? No, probably not. I had no idea. I was so worried about it. And we got to seminar and she was there. And she stayed on stage. And I think that said so much to me as a director at that time. Just that, like, she was no longer able to talk, but she wanted to let us know that everything was going to be okay. And she was a trooper, not only to do it, but to give us hope and courage. And her presence always meant such volumes to us. And so it was just a treasure. And it's a treasure I will never forget. That's right.
So I just remember going, and Mary Kay taught every afternoon. Yes, she did. For like 4 hours.
Absolutely.
Every afternoon she taught. And I just feel that so blessed to have had so much space, to be in her space for so much of the training, of being a director. It was amazing. Anyway, of course, you would never go home and not do it. Oh my God.
That's right.
Slit your wrists and do that.
That's right.
Let's go back to the first trip in 1988, and it was a trip to Switzerland. And we were riding the train with Mary Kay. So we were all took turns taking pictures with her, and then Suzanne was there, and I took a picture. We visited for just a minute. So we went to Schilhorn Mountain, and that's where the train, and it took us on a bus up there. Well, we had just met Janet and Mark Tate, who was another farming kids, you know, their community. And we were up on the mountaintop, and we were having a cup of coffee, and we were remembering what they told us, you know, the tram and what time to be down. Well, we said, okay, we gotta leave, and the guy says, the coffee guy, pouring another cup of coffee, oh, there's more trams, and we're like, oh, okay, we'll just stay. Well, we missed the last Mary Kay tram down, and so the bus was gone, and now everybody was just speaking French, okay? And Janet Tate and I were like, Mary Kay, you know, trying to relate to them. We're with the Mary Kay group. So this James Bond car came screeching up to the little booth, and they're pushing us in. I'm like, okay. And I don't think I'm dreaming this, but he went up on a sidewalk to go around a traffic situation, and I thought, oh my goodness, and you know, Mark's pushing the brake on the tractor, and Alan, Mr. C, is going, your oil light is flashing, He's in the middle, and Janet and I are both going, shh, you know, hush. Well, then pretty soon we took a hard left into a black forest. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is it. And we ride this real bumpy ride through this forest, and then it came to a halt, and there was the train. So we get out, and we climb up, and who was the first person that you think we saw? Mary Kay. But what did she say to us? I knew you could do it. Now, we definitely took enough guff from everybody else, you know, about being late and missing the train and all that. But what I learned from her was to make everybody feel comfortable, to be gracious about whatever went wrong. And it was just such a blessing to have many, many more trips with her. And that was in Switzerland in 1988. So
we all had wonderful interactions with her, but it was about 1997 and Choices had just come out. And I had no idea that Mary Kay had listened to it. And so the company called me one day and said, listen, will you come to Dallas? we're filming something, 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 and we need somebody to do something, something, something. And it was near Easter. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'll miss Easter. I'll miss my family. So I was thinking of reasons why I couldn't. And ever who called me said, oh, and by the way, you would work with Mary Kate all day long in the studio, just you and her. I said, oh, forget my family. I will be there.
Easter Schmeaster.
Forget the family. Anyway, so, you know, if you've done this, it's just a warehouse. There's nothing glamorous about it. And so she was filming, and I got to watch her film, and then whatever it was that I did. And when we took our lunch break, you know, she told me, she said, I just listened to Choices. And that was the year she talked about milking the cows on her career conference stage. And she said, before you go to lunch, you've got to come with me. Now, you never turn Mary Kay down. So, you know how it is. There's just a bunch of dudes back there that have nothing to do with Mary Kay behind that camera, behind the microphone. She drives me backstage, and she says, you're going to tell each of these men individually your milking the cow story. Now, you're going, Mary Kay, those men don't want to hear my milking the cow story. And she goes, everyone needs to hear your milking the cow story. So I literally, she drugged me man to man and said, you need to hear Linda's story.
Wow.
I thought, who would do that? You know, who would be that tenacious? And so the funny part of the whole thing is they're feeding us lunch. Now, do you all remember the makeup artist that had the crazy hair? And why do makeup artists never wear makeup? I don't know. But you all remember her. She was wild, crazy hair, never wore makeup. And so Mary Kay's right here. And Mary Kay had a wicked sense of humor that was politically incorrect. I don't know if all of you know that. And so we're sitting there, and the gal is across from us, and she gets up to go do something, and Mary Kay leans over and she says, do you think she does that on purpose with her hair? And I'm like, Mary Kay, I don't know. But anyway, it was a priceless day.
You haven't even heard the funniest, because I was waiting till I was retired to tell the breastfeeding story. But anyway, I'm not going to tell that one today, but I could after y'all have a chance. But Bill and I lost 2 babies before we had our 2 babies. And Mary Kay, on the second baby, sent a handwritten card from Dallas.
That one for me
and a
too.
very special plant that only grew in California had it sent from California to Kansas to arrive at the same time as the card. Well, at the next event was seminar, and it was the Cadillac luncheon. Of course, you know, she was always there. And she walked right up to me and Bill, and of course I stood up. I was 26 years old, 27, I don't remember. And she took my hand in her face, and she said, I just want to tell you how sorry I am. And a loss is a loss. My second baby died of a heart attack. So it was a hard deal. And she talked to me for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, hugged me like my grandma would have done. And then, the most important thing is, she walked over to Bill, and she talked to him for 20 minutes, and how he was to take care of me, and how he could help me get through this, and how important I was to this company. Even at a young age, she says, I see someone here, and I know you do too. And he said, so I want her to be able to have a family. So when she gets pregnant again, which we know is going to happen, right, Bill? And I'm just standing by her side going, yeah, let's go now. And she said, I know that this girl is going to want to do all the work, do all the beauty shows, but I want her to lay on the couch, and I want you to pamper and take care of her, because we want you to have a family. And Mary Kay will always be here, so she's not to worry about working when she's pregnant. And so when I was pregnant with Benjamin, she called, are you laying on the couch and are you taking care of yourself? Is Bill doing what I told him?
Oh my.
Can you believe that?
Wow. Oh yeah.
Can you believe that? And so I brought Benjamin to the very first seminar. And the first day I got permission to come in and let her meet him. So,
Well, back then there were no cell phones, and so we all there were 70 of us, and we got on the bus, heading to her home. Well, there must have been a horrible accident or something. Well, it should have taken us X number of minutes or half an hour, whatever, to get to her home. Well, it took us like 3 times as long. So by the time we reached her home, it was about 10 minutes before we were supposed to leave her home to come back to corporate for all the afternoon classes. And I just happened to be, when I walked in the home, just happened to be where one of the staff, and I can't even remember who the staff was, it came up to Mary Kay and very sweetly said, Mary Kay, I'm really so sorry. There was an accident. We couldn't let you, of course, there's no way to let her know. And we're supposed to be back, we're supposed to leave in 10 minutes. So Mary Kay took her arm and said, sweetheart, I'll let you know when I'm done with the girls. And we stayed the entire afternoon. We sat on the floor of her living room because there wasn't enough chairs, and we were all, thank goodness we had long skirts back then and we could sit, you know, comfortably. And we all sat on the floor, and she took her shoes off, and she proceeded to spend like 3.5 hours with us. And I just will never forget that time, because that showed me, number one, how to be in charge, right. But also just how she would just say, I know what's supposed to happen today, and you all aren't supposed to be at corporate. That happened, that accident or whatever, because you're supposed to be with me. So I just wanted to share that.
To me, there are times that Mary Kay showed what she was really made of and what she really cared about, because she did not miss a beat at that seminar. And I remember, Dawn, I don't know if you and I were talking about it today, but we remember going, oh, yes. Tammy and I. Yes. So we got to go to her home. She had a barbecue at the Round House. And we got to go to her home. She was there with chin up. And I'll never forget when she looked up at the sky, and it was a crescent moon with a little star underneath that crescent. She goes, oh, look, Susie's here among us. Oh. Who could do that? And some of you all remember when Mel died, and she did not miss leadership, where so many of us would. But she taught me as a very young person that, you know, you make a way, you don't make an excuse. And she was the queen of that example. So that's just one to get us started.
Do you remember that I believe that each one of us could say, without you, I would never be me. And I just look around and I think, oh my gosh, the tapes, cassette tapes. Yes. I remember the first trip. I told Pam the other day, I got on and I was sitting there. It was my first trip, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm wearing. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Pam Tall's voice. And all the things that you all have taught me since I was 24 years old. I mean, think about it. The lessons, the fabric of our lives. You have taught me how to be a mom, now a grandma. You know, a wife. I mean, the things that we have learned from each other. And raise your hand if I ever got to go to your house and speak at one of your things. And how many of we have shared our lives together. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Without you,
without you,
say that again.
Without you,
There
I
would be.
would not be me.
I would not be me.
Yeah.
I like that.
My last top director trip. And so this, of course, is my last national trip. And 44 years of Mary Kay,
Yep.
6 years retired, makes it 50 years of glorious life. And as each of you have experienced. I mean, we have a life that people just dream about, but we got to experience it. But what I want to encourage every single one of you in this room to do is let's not stop, because if you don't come on the emeritus trip, sometime I'm never going to see some of you ever again.
That's right.
And I don't want this to be like high school graduation where you don't see some of these people ever again. So we have fun on that emeritus trip. I've been on every single one since I retired. Sometimes Henry goes, sometimes Henry doesn't go. Sometimes it's good when Henry doesn't go, but we just get with the girls and have fun. So your husband can come or he doesn't have to come. And sometimes we plan a little extra excursion. And but anyway,
Carmen?
I'm not making this next one because okay, it's the only one I'm missing. Is this next one is the cruise, because there's just been too many trips this year with this one included in it. But I will be in Fort Myers, and I hope you will be too. And if you're not on Joanne Halter's list, come see me, and we will get you see Kathy or I, give us your email if you're not getting her email.
Yeah.
Because Joanna only has a way of getting people's email.
Through us.
It's through us. She can't get it any other way.
Yeah.
And so she always puts out, everyone retiring, do you have an email for this person?
Yeah.
And so that's how, so you could be missed, but not intentionally.
Right.
Okay, thank you.